U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's team has undone Trump's plan to lift the COVID-19 travel ban from Europe and Brazil. Biden's incoming White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, says, and I quote, "This is not the time to be lifting restrictions on international travel. In fact, we plan to strengthen public health measures around international travel in order to further mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Psaki's tweet was in response to Trump's statement in which he announced that he would lift travel bans on Europe and Brazil. However, the travel ban for China and Iran would remain in place. Psaki dismissed both of Trump's statements for now, and just a few days ago, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced that all passengers traveling to the U.S. are required to test negative for COVID-19 within 3 days of departure. The rule was due to be into effect on January 26 and a week after Biden's presidential inauguration. Now, earlier I spoke with our correspondent Jagriti Dave, who has been reporting on this story for us from Washington, D.C. Listen in.
So one of the executive orders, in fact, that has just been announced in the last few hours or so is the reversal, the president's plan to reverse the COVID-19 travel restrictions on the UK, Europe and Brazil. But pretty soon afterwards, the incoming White House secretary said that they would block, press secretary said that the Biden administration would block that, saying that now was not the time to ease up on travel restrictions given the rising cases of COVID-19. We are expecting possible a slew of pardons from President Trump as well. This is according to CNN, around 100 pardons or so they report that President Trump is expected to announce in his last 2 days. Some of the policies that Joe Biden might reverse are around immigration, around rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, and potentially renewing relations, renewing the US's efforts to get back to some kind of nuclear deal with Iran. Those are the sorts of things that it's expected the Biden administration will try to reverse.
Staying with some more updates from the United States, Washington, D.C. is on the edge ahead of one of the most critical inauguration ceremonies in the history of the U.S. Following the deadly insurrection attempt at the U.S. Capitol by pro-Trump rioters, serious security concerns have gripped Washington for now. The U.S. Capitol saw several National Guard soldiers arriving from the East Coast as tightest security measures were put in place for the inauguration ceremony. All 50 U.S. states and the District of Columbia are on alert for possible violent protests ahead of the inauguration on Wednesday. Many militia and extremist groups told their followers to in fact stay at home, citing the increased security or the risk that the planned events were law enforcement traps. Meanwhile, the crackdown on pro-Trump rioters continues. The FBI has arrested the founder of the group called Cowboys for Trump. A New Mexico official was in fact arrested after the FBI found that he was in fact part of this group that entered the restricted areas of the U.S. Capitol. The Capitol building was evacuated on Monday after smoke was seen rising from behind. The smoke appears to have come from a nearby fire. The Washington, D.C. Fire Service immediately responded to a fire nearby, which was now extinguished. The D.C. Fire Department said in a statement that there were no injuries in the incident and that this accounts for smoke that many have previously seen. This fire near the U.S. Capitol building has prompted a swift lockdown during the ongoing rehearsals for Inauguration Day. Just a day before Joe Biden is inaugurated as the new president, the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. is on lockdown owing to security threats. Security is tight with thousands of National Guard members deployed. An alert was circulated to the Capitol staff members, saying that the complex was on lockdown with no one being allowed in or out. The unprecedented ramp-up in security continues after the FBI warned of possible armed marches by pro-Trump supporters across state capitals.
You look at the streets of Washington, D.C. and it doesn't look like it's a preparation for an inauguration. Normally you would have the streets thronging with visitors coming to witness this historic moment. But now what we're seeing is streets around the Capitol area, blocks and blocks of streets essentially having the National Guard, law enforcement as the predominant presence. You're seeing the streets around the capital often deserted later on in the evening. There's real sense of security. And I think, as you described in that incident where the capital was on lockdown temporarily, they are very, very concerned about any possible threats to the event.
Co-presented by Skoda. Simply clever.
WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.